Mercedes is facing an uphill battle in the world of Formula One as they aim to catch up with Red Bull's grasp on the fine aerodynamic details necessary to achieve maximum performance. After viewing the limited potential of their W14 in pre-season testing, the team has rejected the zero-sidepods theory and expressed a clear desire to start from scratch. Team principal Toto Wolff estimates it will take 6 to 12 months to catch up with Red Bull's level of understanding, and technical lead Mike Elliott is feeling the pressure to make the necessary changes. Will Mercedes be able to overcome their struggles and reclaim their top spot in the sport? Only time will tell. Catch up with the latest developments in today's video. Mercedes is using the gap in the Formula One schedule to ramp up development work ahead of the debut of its modified W14 at Imola next month. The fact that team principal Toto Wolff has repeatedly stated that the current design concept of the car will be overturned with updates is no secret, though work on the Imola changes was already underway before that decision was made. So this could be a multi-step process, rather than the Imola upgrade being definitive. Could this also be the time we'll see a completely redesigned W14? The B-spec everyone's been talking about in the paddock. After viewing the W14's limited potential in pre-season testing, the zero-sidepod theory was officially rejected without hesitation. The team's desire to alter course and basically start from scratch is expressed clearly and directly. Mercedes team boss Toto Wolff estimates that it will take 6 to 12 months for Mercedes to catch up with Red Bull's grasp of the fine aerodynamic detail required to maximize the performance of the current generation of Formula One cars. Mercedes is making big steps in the wind tunnel, according to Wolff, as it pursues a concept change that it thinks will unleash higher performance possibilities. However, given that Red Bull seems to have amassed tremendous expertise in how to make the most of the current generation of ground effect vehicles, Wolff admits that matching that know-how would take time. He also believes that as the Red Bull idea matures, the pace of advancement will unavoidably slow, allowing Mercedes to make relative gains. I think the lag is probably between 6 and 12 months, because that's the time that it took us to figure out what was actually happening with the car, said Wolff, when asked by the race how long it would take to catch up in terms of level of understanding Red Bull has of the car. And that means we just need to have double the development speed, a strong development slope. Their gains are going to be incrementally smaller if the concept is mature. I think aero-wise, wind tunnel time can help a bit, but not hugely. It's just, we've got to get our act together, and if we fundamentally understand where we need to put the car, then the steps are going to be large, but we need to be perfect. This was intended to be the year when Mercedes reclaimed the top spot in Formula One, competing for victory in every race. Wolff's patience has run out, and the technical staff led by Mike Elliott will face pressure and an ultimatum, despite the team's compliance to its no-blame culture, for continuing to insist on an aerodynamic philosophy that failed in 2022. The positive results achieved in the second half of last season, especially the amazing triumph in Brazil, prompted Elliott's crew to refrain from drastically altering the design philosophy. The new W14 has undergone significant evolutions in comparison to the previous W13, including some of the aerodynamic solutions found on the Red Bull. However, the expected improvement in performance has not occurred, and the gap with the leader has grown. While Ferrari has never declared its intention to change its design philosophy, despite a hint from Carlos Sainz that it should, Wolff and Mercedes have made no secret of the fact that the gains they made in 2022 compared to a Red Bull team that had stopped developing its car misled them into continuing with an idea they now consider a failure. It's now time to start again, and the necessary components are already in the wind tunnel. Wolff's dissatisfaction stems from the fact that Aston Martin, a Mercedes customer team that purchases numerous mechanical components from it, is now more competitive. Elliott cannot afford for the W14B project to fail as well. While it may be tempting for any team to create a copy of the Red Bull right now, Mercedes should instead look to Aston Martin, given the current component commonality and the performance its customers are enjoying. They are the ones making the most of the internal parts working, so they should take their inspiration for their new aero design from them. The W13's difficulties were mostly due to porpoising, which was not predicted in the simulations and created huge issues in the first half of the season, since it was also present in corners and a setup window that was too tight to allow the floor and tyres to operate. Last year, the two drivers often couldn't understand how the car could be so poor from the start, but with the appropriate settings in free practice, the car discovered fantastic downforce. This still occurs to some degree on the 2023 car, and it has also been seen in Australia. The Mercedes was placed into the appropriate window of usage for qualifying, and it delivered a fantastic performance, allowing George Russell and Lewis Hamilton to slip in behind Max Verstappen, and even enabling them to overtake the Dutchman and put up a bit of a fight. However, this lack of race performance is still much too common, and is often influenced by outside influences. For example, the increase in temperatures during the Australian weekend aided Mercedes in obtaining more grip from the tyres. As a result, it's not primarily a matter of faulty aerodynamic idea, as was the case with Ferrari. Mercedes had significant disadvantage because of the absence of connection between the simulation data and the circuit. According to Wolff's statements, more traditional side pods will be part of Mercedes' strategy, but the ramifications for the side impact structure suggest that this may not be possible right now. However, Mercedes should consider what Aston Martin has accomplished with its own side pod design update for 2023, since it shares many internal components with Mercedes. The new design of Mercedes' rear wing, which was unveiled during the first race of the season in Bahrain, quickly resulted in an increase in the car's ability to accelerate from a standstill to a high speed in a straight line. The revised rear wing family has made it feasible to minimize drag, which was a significant negative component of the 2022 Mercedes. It's no surprise that Aston Martin, which resembles the 2022 Mercedes W13 around the rear wing, is among the vehicles with the highest drag. However, when the Mercedes and Aston Martin strengths are combined, the potential is evident. But everyone should stay aware that Aston Martin are also yet to update their rear end. Could this reveal hidden potential that Mercedes could replicate? Last year, Elliott and Andrew Chauvelin often stated that the zero-sidepod project was far quicker in simulations than they had anticipated. On the track, however, this was not the case, as the car lost downforce owing to porpoising and an overly stiff setup. Simply raising the car off the ground rendered the floor inoperable, necessitating the use of an overly rigid suspension setup. This issue has been addressed in part by the W14, but the upgraded version will aim to run even closer to the surface. The sidepod idea has received the most attention. Technical Director Mike Elliott acknowledged that packaging alterations must be made under the bodywork to suit this sidepod, which he described as distinct from the Red Bull design, and also distinct from the existing Mercedes zero-sidepod design. But the idea shift is more than just the sidepod. The strong underfloor is the main point of the existing F1 car idea, and it is the starting point for any revisions. What occurs next is that it is optimized as part of a very complicated and interacting network of airflows, both on and off the bodywork. In comparison to Red Bull, Mercedes clearly has a knowledge gap in this area. To be honest, perhaps we should have adopted the word concept to mean sidepod, said Trackside Engineering Director Andrew Chauvelin. What we're doing is looking at bigger departures in what we've been doing. So this car is an evolution of the car that we had last year. A lot of that is tied around where we've got the side impact structure. We're looking at bigger departures because it's evident that this hasn't given us the performance that we'd like. Saying that, there are other areas of the car that we know that we need to improve as well. So it'd be very misguided to think if we go and put a different looking sidepod on it, all of that gap's going to vanish. The reality is that the vast majority of that gap is going to have to come from other performance areas. We've got a lot of projects at the moment trying to bring performance over the next 5 races. Mercedes need more than simply a restyle of the sidepods. The design must function entirely differently. This will mostly be due to the mechanical setup and the adoption of new rear suspension, which should arrive with aerodynamic upgrades from Imola. The budget constraint, which bans major expenditure on rushing through large-scale upgrade programs, is a restricting issue for Mercedes and all the other teams pursuing Red Bull. Mercedes will not be able to do miracles this year, but it's shown outstanding recovery capabilities last season. Mercedes aims to bring the fight to the front, but could a complete redesign be enough? After all, the other teams are bringing updates as well. This means that Mercedes' update should not only bring them back to the front of current times, but also a bit more to keep up with competitors' development. It's clear to see that Mercedes aren't writing this season off. They're hoping that from the 6th race on, they can bring the fight to the Red Bulls, and are back in a position they've become all too familiar with, the front. What are your expectations? Will the complete redesign be enough for Mercedes to battle the frontrunners? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.